Let's go.
Hello guys and welcome back. Myself and Ant Haynes are here to talk about 23.2 strategy, tips and everything that you can use to execute your first and second and however many attempts you plan on doing with this one. We are going to sit and watch Ant and Alex go head to head as myself and Ant provide some commentary and some thoughts on this workout. So without further ado, we'll get straight into it. So initial thoughts, 2-part workout. I mean, this is the beauty of the CrossFit Open. Data from last year told us that we would not see this test, but previous years we did see this test. And so this really just goes to show that to excel in the CrossFit Open and in the sport in general, you just need to be preparing for absolutely everything and you need to be good at absolutely everything. So I'm kind of happy they brought it back because it really opens up the options when it comes to training, testing and preparation next year. Thoughts, Ant?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised last year when they didn't have a sort of max complex or max strength test. So I'm actually pretty happy they brought it back as a test of fitness. As an athlete, not too happy because it's where I fall short comparatively to the rest of the field. But I do think it's an important facet of fitness to test within the CrossFit Open. And I'm also stoked to see that they've brought in running, which I personally think is a great thing to test. When you look at the CrossFit Games, they always test, like, it's a lot of running in the CrossFit Games.
Yep.
So it's only, I think it's great to see it in the affiliate setting now, to be able to hold it in the Open.
Yeah, Meezy. Obviously, something that might be problematic for some affiliates is just the setup of the room.
Yeah.
Again, these first 2 workouts have maybe not been the most affiliate friendly, but we were lucky here at Coastal that we were actually able to, like they did in the live announcement, have the shuttle run set up so you're running through the rig and your 25-foot mark is actually right under the pull-up bar. So that's a massive advantage to us. But let's actually just talk about this first part of the workout straight away here. The first thing most people are probably seeing is just the technique used on the shuttle runs.
Yeah.
So this is something we've been practicing a lot over the last 12 months. And this is kind of a technique that we feel is quite a good technique for shuttle running. Something it does allow us to do is essentially accelerate out of the turn. Didn't see any of the athletes in the live announcement do this technique. So essentially what you're going to see when the athletes, everyone on this video for the matter of fact, is going to be turning early and kind of shuffling with a couple of backward steps, not breaking their stride and accelerating, bouncing out of it. What I would just say, if you're seeing this for the very first time and it's not something you've been practicing, maybe now is not the best time to change and try a new technique. Go with what you feel most comfortable. But of course, in your warm-up, your prep, if you're doing a run-through, you can try the technique and if it feels good, then stick with it. I would just say one thing to think about is that if you are doing this turning technique, you cannot alternate which way you are turning, generally speaking, whilst you're running. You kind of have to stick with one turn and then maybe the next round you can go off the other leg, just because it will break your stride and you will kind of start to do little stutter steps.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Ant?
I think if you watch myself and Alex go here, you'll notice that when Al touches, the same hand touches as the foot is forward. Now, I personally think that creates a lot more compression on one side, especially around the QLs and lower back, which has a lot of hinging in this workout as well. So if you're touching on the same side, it just creates a little bit more work. Whereas you see, if my left foot is forward, my right hand touches the floor, and that allows for much more, I'm going to say it's a natural 3-point stance of what you'd see in like a sprinter at a start line.
So Al's actually changing his now and he's going to it. One thing he did report back after finishing a workout is he did cramp up on one side.
Oh, yeah.
He was turning on the same side the whole time and then he also stepped up, I believe, on the burpees on the same side the whole time.
Yeah, so I turned, my left foot was always forward on every single turn that I did on the shuttle run and my right foot stepped up every single time. You'll also notice is when we're doing these burpee pull-ups, I actually utilize my upper body a lot more, and Alex jumps a lot more.
Yeah.
So I know he's not a big fan of like strict pulling anyway. So he said, I want to jump real hard to reduce the amount I have to pull. You watch him here as he goes up. His jump is way higher and much more powerful than mine, and I actually grab the bar and it's a slower pull. Yeah. But I'm just a bit more enduring in that movement.
And I think that's kind of the beauty of the movement is that you do have various ways to execute it. So Al using more lower body and use more momentum to get his chin over the bar, whereas Ant is using a little bit less leg, maybe that's going to save your legs for potentially the run and maybe the thruster for part B, and using a little bit more of his strict upper body pulling strength. I would say that the burpee pull-up is a much slower cadence. You're kind of getting 3 to 4 seconds of rest between every pull-up, maybe a little bit less, which means that you kind of do get a bit more recovery, and you'll be surprised if you're someone who's decent, when you have decent strict pulling strength, how long you can consistently chip away at these repetitions for.
Yeah.
I think a really important thing we haven't mentioned yet is scaling or doing the RX workout. The thing that's going to determine which one you do really is whether or not you can do a pull-up.
Yeah.
So the technique that everyone is using in this video is jumping straight into the pull-up. Remember, you can also perform your burpee, jump up to pull-up bar, perform a kipping beat swing, and then a kipping pull-up. It would be much slower in cadence, but it's going to save your upper body a lot more because you're creating a lot more momentum.
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be a lot of people who got through 23.1 and they surprise themselves with toes to bar, who then are also going to surprise themselves with this and be able to crank through quite a few rounds of it. I think there will be a lot of people who, on the cusp of what you're saying, can kind of do a strict pull-up when like the knees come up, maybe the hips open a little bit, we run the legs up a little bit. I think those people will benefit from a big jump and then a little bit of a knee drive. So it's kind of like a half kipping, half strict jumping pull-up. But again, I think this is something to also think about is, especially when in an affiliate setting, we don't have pull-up bars which are just automatically there for your height.
Yep.
So I know for Al, for example, the reason why he's actually doing his burpees about 5 feet in front of me is because that pull-up bar was a slightly shorter measurement. He probably knew as well that aerobically he would want a little bit of a rest before he went into his burpee pull-ups. So it made sense to him to touch the line, step forward about 3 or 4 steps, and then do his burpee pull-ups there because it was an inch less on his jump.
Yep.
So again, just making it as efficient as possible. And if you're someone who's you're going to get bottlenecked in the burpee pull-up section, definitely try and find a pull-up bar or build a little castle or a little fort underneath your pull-up bar to allow it to be perfect for you, that when your thumbs are touching, you're reaching up overhead, you're literally just under the bar.
Yeah, you want to be setting up your station so your hands, when extended overhead, are as close to that pull-up bar as possible. If you can get within a millimeter and still be within the rules, then that's going to be massively advantageous. Whereas stepping to a pull-up bar, it's only going to happen once per round, and then you essentially stay in that station. I would say that's definitely not the end of the world. So I would always opt for getting a pull-up bar or setting up a station that's as close to the pull-up bar as possible, even if that means having to potentially walk a couple of steps to get there.
Yeah. I think a couple of tips on the burpee pull-up that I would give, and these are just things that I thought about when I was doing the workout, is firstly, in your warm-up, dust up your hands, get plenty of chalk, and slap them down exactly where your easiest position to do the burpee is, and go straight into the jump like Alex and I are doing here. So you can see my hands actually hit the line every single time, because it doesn't matter, that line is essentially irrelevant once you're doing your burpee pull-ups. My hands are going on the line every time, and then I always got a big step up with my right foot. And that basically meant that I was jumping directly underneath the pull-up bar. A lot of guys who went in the heat after were saying like, hey, I'm swinging a lot when I'm doing these pull-ups, and I'm landing about 6 inches in front of my pull-up bar and having to really step back before it. So their problem there was that their hands were not close enough to the vertical line of the pull-up bar. Yeah. And then their step was also short. So essentially they were jumping 6 inches forward and also up. Yeah. Again, that's leaking efficiency in terms of if you're going to struggle for pull-ups in this part, but also it means that every time you come down from the pull-up bar, you have to take a bigger step back before you go into your next rep. So small things to think about with that.
Yeah, really good point. I think something else to note is that it's strange to watch coaches at Coastal Fitness working out with their shirts on, and that is actually deliberate, especially with the setup that we have here, where the line for the turn at the shuttle run is directly under the pull-up bar. What we don't really want is a sweaty line. So as you're turning in the shuttle run, we don't want to be slipping. So I think that's actually why Ant is wearing his t-shirt here.
Once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Never again.
So think about that. You don't want to be, especially if you do have like a synthetic tape, which is slippery, we want to keep that as dry as possible. So if you are a sweaty individual, even with a t-shirt on, maybe having a towel there handy to wipe as the workout goes on would be a good idea. And I think also just thinking about part B as well, we want to have that such strong, solid rack position, and a sweaty body, especially after 15 minutes of running in burpees, could potentially mean that bar slipping down the front rack.
I actually do a t-shirt change after this as well. Another thing, I guess, to talk about if we're talking about clothing and equipment, 2 things that I have is knee sleeves on. They're not around my knees. Don't need them on my knees for this, but they're around my calves. So they're higher up the calf, so they don't constrict any sort of blood flow to the ankle and the lower leg. But they're ready to basically be pulled straight up, and then once they're up for the thruster, and that's it, done. The next thing that I also have on is sweatbands, which I am one of those sweaty individuals that you were talking about, so I don't want to worry about I know I have a chalk bucket next to me just in case, but I don't think I touched it once for this part of the workout. I touched it plenty when I got to the thruster. So keep the hands nice and dry so you can just chip through those reps quickly and just drop down to the floor.
And I think the last thing on apparel is footwear.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend performing this first part of the workout, part A, wearing a pair of shoes that you feel comfortable running in. Again, this should be something you practiced already. So if you're buying a brand new pair of shoes, maybe today's not the best time to go and wear them, but something you feel comfortable changing direction in, because footwear is, you basically want an athletic shoe that you can run and jump with for this first part of the workout. For the second part of the workout, we want something that's going to give us stability. You're going to have some time, not that much time, but you're going to have enough time to actually do a shoe change as soon as the 15 minutes is up. So just like you can see this kind of the pile next to Ant's bar, you're going to have your weightlifting belt, if that's something you're going to be using. You're going to have your shoes that you're going to be changing into. And if you want to really take it to the next level, have that spare t-shirt that you can change into.
Yeah, so for me, I got 2 pairs of running shoes. I got these ones that I'm wearing, which are the Reebok Float Rides, which are just a pretty bog standard running shoe. But they got a more stable sole. The normal running shoe that I would normally wear is a Puma Nitro Deviate, which has got like a carbon plate in it, but there's a lot less contact on the floor. So these were immediately a better choice for me because it gave me a better drive when I started warming up my thruster, gave me a better balance in the foot. Whereas I know if I lift in those Pumas, my feet rock about and they're like got little clouds under my feet, and that doesn't give me much stability.
So did you lift in these shoes?
Yeah, I did. I didn't do a shoe change. My shoes were there just in case, but my positions felt fine. I was never going to be limited in the squat for me. I'm always going to be limited in the press overhead. So as long as I felt balanced enough as I hit the clean, so that's the pull off the floor, but then also as I stand up the clean, as long as I felt balanced enough in the warm up, I was going to keep these on.
Nice. Okay, well, something for you guys to think about. Again, this is just where you use your warm up to your advantage and get a feel for what feels best, and then you just go with it. I think most of the people who competed and did this workout this morning actually stuck with their running shoes. Some people actually had a little shoe change. I think obviously if you struggle for A, depth, or B, position, then lifters is a bit of a no-brainer. You don't most lifters will have a the Velcro on it, so you don't even have to rip up the laces, just put the Velcro across, good enough. For most people, it's not going to be a 1 rep max clean. So you'll be limited anyway on how much weight you're going to be moving. I want to add something else to the pull-ups now, because Al's making it quite obvious he's doing this. But as soon as that chin moves over the bar, there is no stipulation that you need to be controlling yourself down. So skipping out the eccentric portion, you'll see as soon as Al's chin gets over the bar, he just drops basically from that top position. And you are kind of lowering yourself a little bit, but it's not really. You're kind of just free-falling, controlling yourself down to a point. You'll see what's happening with Al when he lands. Well, actually, both of us now kind of just doing that little step back. I think that's pretty normal because that's where you're landing. Now, in terms of step back versus jump back, or step up versus jump up in the burpee, remember, these are all different things that you can use that are going to change your cadence, but it's also going to change the amount of work you're doing per repetition. So for a long grinding slog like this, especially with an ascending rep scheme, because most people who are proficient enough with pull-ups are going to feel good probably in the round of 5, maybe the 10s. It's probably the 15s and 20s where you're going to start to feel that cumulative build-up of consecutive reps. So Ant is using a jump back and a step up technique. I think Al was using something similar. I think he was even using some step back, step ups. And Skulk, who executed and did well, got quite deep into his 30s, was using a step back, step up the entire way. So again, something that you feel comfortable with, that's going to keep your heart rate down as much as possible. And know you're going to feel good at the start of this workout, but you want to be performing in the second half of that 15 minutes. Making sure you're not going too hot. I would say it's just a hard one to give a pacing strategy on this one, because as soon as you have an ascending rep scheme, basically the feel of the workout is always changing. It starts off with more of a running dominant workout, and then by the halfway mark, for most people, it's going to turn into more of a burpee pull-up dominant workout. And so the running might actually become more like your active recovery between your runs. And if you watch Krenikov and Vellner, they had a pretty significant drop off in their running pace between big sets of burpees. But you might actually kind of need that to be able to get back into burpees and continue working again.
I think another thing on the burpee pull-up is, again, this is more for people who are probably going to be limited on the burpee pull-up, is although it's called a burpee pull-up, there's no stipulation which says you have to do a burpee immediately into the pull-up. So, for example, if you wanted to do the burpee, stand up, breathe, then jump up and execute, and you give yourself the best chance to hit the hardest movement, which, let's be honest, in this is not the burpee, it's not the shuttle run, it is the pull-up. So as soon as you've done the pull-up, get to the floor, stand up, rest again. Hit the jumping pull-up, get to the floor, stand up, rest again. So it just basically takes away the need for the burpee versus rushing through the movement as one movement.
Just want to jump in here. You're seeing now Al in these later rounds with fatigue's creeping in, his step up is getting much shorter, which means he's having to add an extra step for every single burpee. So you'll see a short step up, step forward, and then a rest on the quads.
Yeah.
Decides he doesn't want any more. But whereas Ant was stepping through to that line every single time. And again, that added up over multiple reps can be a massive difference in terms of time saved. Can I ask, Ant, did you throttle back at all knowing that you had the part B coming up at this part of the workout?
Not really. There wasn't much localized build up in like quads, lower back, shoulders, grip, or anything like that. Yeah, so I actually started pushing the pace a bit more here. You can see my turn changes.
Why is that? Just because
I was moving. No, I was moving faster, so I didn't want to do the turn. So I was pushing. I was still pushing off though, so it's a quick touch and turn, right, rather than a rotate. So I always say that the side turn is ever so slightly faster than the early rotate. So
okay,
something to think about.
So I think let's start talking about the thruster now. So you got 5 minutes, and that's not that long of a time.
Yeah.
I think for most people, you're going to definitely get 3 lifts in, and with a potential 4th. I know you got 4 lifts in.
I got 5.
You got 5 lifts in the end. Obviously, that's going to be determined by how fatigued you are after the first bit, which is going to be determined by your pacing strategy and how proficient you are in pull-ups. It's also going to be defined by how well developed your aerobic system is. So a highly developed aerobic system is going to need less time in recovery and be able to get straight into that first lift.
Yeah.
Now, remember, you can have judges help you here. So I would 100% use that if you can to your advantage. Just general things to think about is, at this point in the workout, you will not have done a squat clean thruster or a thruster in probably about 20 minutes if you take into account like the setup time then the actual 50 minutes of work. So your very first lift generally is going to be just like to grease the groove and dial in the technique of the squat clean thruster. So I wouldn't be thinking about making that first rep count as a potential lift on the leaderboard, but it's just get comfortable with some light to moderate weight, and once you feel that that's dialed in, we start to then add more weight.
Yeah. So I was going to say so Izzy's my judge. I was basically going to tell her to put the clips on when I got above 100 kg, but I just thought I may as well put it on just in case. I had enough time. I'd already done one attempt here, so I went 70, 90. So I'm at 90 now. Just put the clips on. These are kind of routine lifts for me. These are like warm up prepping lifts. So I don't even know what the time was when I went, but it wasn't very long. So I've already done 2 lifts before Al's even done one here.
Did you have any expectations as to what you might be able to hit in this workout?
I was hoping to hit above 115. Was what I wanted to hit.
And can I ask, fresh, what is your 1 rep max? It's your heaviest thrust you've done in the last couple of years?
Probably 126, 125, 126.
Yeah.
kg, not pounds.
Okay, so I don't want to spoil the no spoiler alerts here, but you actually ended up getting pretty close to what your 1 rep max is, which is obviously great.
I also haven't done a heavy thruster like that in a long time. I think the last time I did a heavy thruster was when you programmed it for me before semi-finals last year, and you made me go to. That's when I had COVID.
Yeah, I
contracted COVID that day, and I was like, "Wow, this bar is really hard to move today."
Yeah,
and
so I think something we got to think about here is the power clean or the squat clean. So if you are proficient in the squat clean, I'm going to say that is advantageous because it's just less time and attention. You're essentially pulling yourself straight into a squat and going straight into the thruster. But if you don't feel comfortable or confident with your squat clean technique, or you are someone who can power clean a lot more than you can squat clean, it might be a good idea to perform a power clean, set your hands, perform the thruster after that bar is up. But remember, it must be one smooth movement once you begin your squat.
Yeah, so another thing that I've done here is that I put chalk across my rack position. Generally speaking, a lot of people are going to now have to move to a full grip on the bar, which a lot of people won't use when they do just a regular clean. So using a full grip on the bar and then just dusting up the shoulders just gives a little bit more friction between the bar and your t-shirt or the bar and your skin. So hopefully just secures that position a little bit more for you.
So you just hit 110 there, and I think Al's going for 115 here.
Yeah, that's 115.
Yeah, that looked easy.
Yeah.
So in terms of what are you doing between your lifts, and you didn't do any weight changing. Al decided to do one side.
I think he went. Was that 95? Did he just hit? Because now he's gone 120. Oh no, he's got 120 now.
Yeah, 120 now. So whether you sit down or you stand up, again, just dependent on you and really how you're feeling. I think belts would be a good option here. Again, like Ant pulled up his knee sleeves. If you need things like wrist wraps, you've got time to get all that stuff on now. I would generally advise kind of slightly bigger weight jumps, which is what both of these guys are doing. Just think about that, is that if you're going bigger weight jumps, you are lifting overall less volume, less load, versus someone who does lots of moderate to moderate heavy lifts is going to be lifting more overall load. Essentially, we want to be thinking about saving our energy and our resources for the lift that counts. And in both these cases, you guys both hit the lift that counts, the one that you wanted to hit, with about 45 to 60 seconds to go. And that gave you enough time to kind of go for like a bit of a Hail Mary, go for something big.
I think Alex went from 105 to 120 and missed it, is what he did. So now he's back to 115.
Yeah.
So I've gone to 121 now here, and
I was getting the 3 people in the crowd fired up, which is awesome.
And I'm pretty sure there's 10 seconds left on the clock here.
So remember, something that's really important for us to know is that as long as that bar is coming off the floor before that 5-minute mark, you're good to go. So, Ant, you left yours right until the last minute. As long as it's coming off the floor, and gets a rep. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think just some general reminders. Remember, you've got to read the movement standards, got to read the official scorecards. That is on you as the athlete. There are lots of little moving parts, things like the bar coming off the floor before the 5-minute mark, judges being allowed to help you, just the format of the room. We've got to know that kind of stuff. Other things to think about is in terms of timers, if it's problematic for you to get a clock in your screen, the WODproof app solves that problem. Make sure you have that downloaded before you come in and hit this workout. And I think that's really about it for me. Ant. Any closing thoughts?
No, I think if you know that one of these workouts is going to be a massive hit to you on the leaderboard, so you know that your absolute strength and your strength speed is not there, and you just can't put up a competitive thruster, you're going to have to bury yourself in the first one. If you have the ability to, of course, that is, right? Same the other way around. If you know your aerobic system just isn't there, and you know you're going to be taking a pretty low position on the leaderboard, maybe it's worthwhile just getting through and like getting a low finishing position, but really trying to hit a Hail Mary, like you said, on the B portion of this, and go for like something that's pretty damn close to your 1 rep max, true 1 rep max thruster. Yeah, I think that's just something to think about for people who are maybe not as well rounded.
Yeah. But then with that said, the athletes who are going to crush this workout will be performing very well in part A and very well in part B. Okay, that's a wrap from us. Good luck to everyone taking on 23.2. I hope these strategies and tips helped you. And we'll see you here next week for the final week of the Open.